If you give me 10 minutes of your time, your porn addiction will be gone, or you will at least be watching 10 times less by implementing what I'm going to show you. Doesn't matter how long you've been struggling, how many things you've tried before, this works for everyone. My name is Sathiya Sam. I'm a men's transformation coach, international speaker, and an author, and I've dedicated the last 6 years of my life to helping men quit pornography addiction. So the reason that I'm really confident that I can reduce your relapse rate by 10x is because I've worked with 1,500 plus men over the years, helped them quit porn, and have seen this work for them time and time again. Now, before I can really break this down for you, we need to actually unlearn a couple of things. Because if you're watching this video, you probably tried internet filters, you probably tried counting streaks, you probably tried willpower, you probably tried more spiritual disciplines, maybe even got an accountability partner at one time, or you went to a seminar or a webinar. You've tried a couple things and they brought you here. You're still struggling and you're trying to figure out. Now, I know this because I've been there myself. I was addicted to porn for 15 years, and it took me a long time to figure out how to actually break free. I had my last relapse in February 2016, and I haven't looked back since, and you can have a really similar story if you follow what I show you in this video. The first thing that you need to understand is that you cannot quit pornography by simply changing your behavior. Now, that probably sounds a little bit backwards to you, but here's what I actually mean. Imagine that porn addiction is a weed growing in your garden and you want to get this weed out. Well, you have two options. You can either run it over with the lawnmower or you can put some gloves on and dig it out by the roots. Anytime you try to just modify the behavior, that's like running it over with a lawnmower. It temporarily removes the weed, but as long as the root system is there, it's going to come back. If you really want lasting freedom, if you really want to quit porn addiction for good, you got to put the gloves on, get to work a little bit, and remove the roots. Now, that's a really nice metaphor, but let's talk about what this means practically. The first thing is when you go after the roots, you stop counting streaks. Okay, so let's think about this. Imagine that you are struggling with porn daily. So you watch porn 30 times a month. You watch it once every day, 30 days in a month, about 30 times a month. If all you try to do is white knuckle it or you slap on an internet filter, you know what's going to happen? You're going to go 7 days, 14 days without porn, and then you're going to have the biggest binge of your life and you're going to go back to watching 30 times a month again. But when you go after the roots, okay, it takes a little bit more time. But what happens is maybe the first month you still watch 30 times because you're figuring things out. It takes a while to understand what the roots are, and I'll talk about how you can find them out later on in this video. But you got to find out what the roots are, and then month 2 you start to get some momentum. And so instead of 30 slips, you're not slipping every day, you're slipping every 3 days. And so now instead of 30 slips, you're down to 10. So just like that, we're doing a third of the relapsing that was happening before. And month 3, you start to get some momentum. Maybe you're building some community, or you have an expert guiding you, and so you're starting to trust them more. You're starting to do more of what they tell you because you got some progress. They can give you more advanced techniques and trainings. And so you start to get the momentum going. And by month 3, by month 4, instead of watching 30 times in a month, you're maybe watching 2-3 times in a month. And just like that, we see a huge difference that's not as sexy. It's not the big long streak that you can tell this amazing story about on social media. But if we zoom out a little bit and look at the grand scheme of things, we can see that if things keep going in the right direction and you continue to dig at the roots, eventually this number per month is going to be 0 and there will be no turning back. Okay, the next part of a roots-based approach is we have to acknowledge that there's a deeper reason for why we watch pornography. See, you might have told yourself that you just watch it because you're a dude, or because I have urges, or because, it just the thought pops into my head and I watch. It's plain and simple. But the reality is, if you keep returning to something again and again and again, it's meeting a need. So the question we want to ask ourselves, and this is a very, very good question to ask if you want to start identifying the roots of your issue, is what is pornography offering me? Is it offering connection, comfort, acceptance, relief, security? There's no right or wrong answer here, but if we can answer this question, what is porn offering me, with some clarity, we're going to start to understand what the solution looks like. Abraham Lincoln famously said, if I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first 5 sharpening the axe. And when it comes to getting to the roots, we want to have the same approach. We want to spend a lot of time diagnosing or identifying what the root issues really are. And then the solutions will start to present themselves. A lot of guys just rush into the solutions and they don't even really know what the actual problem is. That's why we have to identify the roots first. So now let's take this a step further. Okay, so let's say we've identified that the reason you watch pornography is for acceptance. It gives you this feeling that you're good enough. It helps you feel good about yourself. The next time that you're tempted, you're going to identify, oh, I'm probably tempted to watch pornography because deep down inside, I'm not feeling good enough. That's usually why I watch pornography. So the question is, what caused you to not feel good enough? And what's a healthier way to get this need met? See, there's nothing wrong with doing things that help you feel better about yourself, but we need to make sure that we're actually doing things that are healthy, but we want to make sure our solutions are actually healthy and that they don't leave us feeling worse off, feeling emptier, or causing the destruction that a porn addiction does in our life. So if this example resonates with you, let me give you some ideas here. So you feel tempted to watch pornography. That's a signal to you, okay, I'm feeling insecure, I'm feeling inferior, I'm not feeling good about myself. This would be a chance for you to speak some affirmations. Maybe you got to get awkward about it. Maybe you get in front of the bathroom mirror and you just talk the truth about who you really are. I mean, sometimes you have to do those things if you're serious about recovery. Maybe you call a friend. Maybe you start to remind yourself of the times that you did accomplish something, times where you did something really positively or really effectively, times where you made a difference in someone's life, where you went above and beyond and you were generous or you were really kind. If you can start to redirect your thoughts and start to really get yourself conscious of why you're valuable and what actually gives you value in this world, you can start to combat that temptation at a root level. And the beautiful part about this is it's self-reinforcing, which means if you do it once and it succeeds, you're going to want to do it again and again and again. And naturally, those temptations for pornography will start to lessen. So another really important part of a roots-based approach is proactivity. See, a lot of guys just think, you know what, my goal is that the next time I'm tempted and every time after that, I'm going to say no. Here's the thing, that's a losing battle because you might be able to do that if everything's kind of working out and life is going well. But all it takes is a couple of days, a string of some bad events, some bad news, you not having a great sleep, so you're not as resilient. All it takes is just a couple things to fall against you, and all of a sudden, when you're in a moment of temptation, you give in. What we want to do instead is be proactive. We want to get ahead of the curve. So we want to ask ourselves, what are the feelings and what are the thoughts that lead us into a place of temptation? In other words, if every time you feel overwhelmed at work, eventually you go and act out, then we know that the next time you feel overwhelmed, you got to nip that thing in the bud as quickly as possible before it develops into this place or this tempting situation where you're trying to figure out whether or not you're going to watch pornography. Being proactive ensures that you can stop things before they become more problematic and the odds are stacked against you. That's what happens if you let things go too long. They fester and then the odds are stacked against you, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of willpower to try to fight the temptation. By having a proactive approach, you can ensure that you don't find yourself in these moments where you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Now, to drive this one step further, specifically, one of the best ways that you can actually build this skill is through journaling. And you just need two simple questions when you journal. What am I thinking? And what am I feeling? And if you do this every day for 5 minutes, you will start to better understand what's going on within you, and you will start to identify these little clues that let you know, oh, I am actually stressed, I am overwhelmed, I am feeling insecure, and you can start to nip these things in the bud before they become worse. So the last thing that you want to consider with a roots-based approach is addressing any childhood trauma. Now, you're probably going to hear that word and say, oh no, trauma, like I didn't have anything bad happen to me, I wasn't abused, and there weren't any major car accidents, and my house didn't burn down. But trauma is not always some big catastrophe. Sometimes trauma is not about what happened to you, it's about what didn't happen to you. You know, somebody who wasn't there for you when you needed them, somebody who didn't show you love in the way that you needed it. It turns out for me, I had a really good upbringing. I was the guy who said I don't have any trauma. But as I got further into recovery, it turns out that I did actually have some wounds from when I was a kid with my parents that affected me. They hurt me. They left me feeling unloved, and it's one of the reasons I watched so much pornography. It was to actually medicate and to cope and to feel like I was loved and valuable enough. So you may not observe anything from the surface that seems obvious like a trauma. I guarantee you every single client I've ever worked with has something deeper in their past that's contributing. When you can identify these things and then you can resolve them, you can heal them and work through them, which doesn't always take a very long time. I mean, it depends on what you're dealing with and how ready you are. Once you're willing to address them, you can really start to see huge strides in your recovery. And again, this is why I'm so confident that it can lead to lasting results, because when you have trauma resolved, you start to change. Your perspective changes, the way you make decisions changes, and the way you view yourself changes, and all of those things lead to lasting success. The biggest mistake that I see people making is they try to do this thing on their own and they end up getting like 2x instead of 10x the results that they want. They make a little bit of progress and then they plateau. And once they plateau, they keep guessing or they keep trying the same old things that are getting the same old results. Working with other people allows you to continue to reinvent yourself. You get to find new results, new ideas, and it keeps you accountable with other people who are pursuing the same goal. And the icing on the cake, if you really want to take this seriously, is getting an expert, getting somebody to guide you along the way, somebody who's been there, somebody who has a track record, somebody who's got some expertise, and they can really ensure that you don't make those rookie mistakes, that you stay on the right path, and they'll ensure that you achieve your desired outcome. So I want to hear from you. What do you think is the #1 reason people struggle with this addiction? Let me know in the comments and I'll take a look.